Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the English Daily Book Summary YouTube channel. In order to not stop learning, listen to an English book summary every day for free.
William Shakespeare, King Lear. What do you get when you mix one aging king, three very different daughters, an opportunistic bastard, a loyal fool, a storm that would make Poseidon flinch, and a handful of brutal moral reckonings? Well, you get King Lear, Shakespeare's most devastating masterpiece and perhaps the bleakest family drama ever written. Set in a pre-Christian Britain that feels at once mythic and all too familiar, the play tells the story of Lear, an ageing monarch who decides to divide his kingdom based on how much his daughters flatter him. And here's a spoiler: it doesn't go well. Betrayals pile up, disguises multiply, eyes are gouged, and the natural order collapses into something deeply unnatural. But King Lear is more than just a high tragedy. It's a fierce meditation on power, aging, madness, and the merciless consequences of overreaching pride. For over 400 years, it struck a nerve with anyone who's ever faced frailty, family drama, or the creeping sense that the world is not, in fact, just. So if you're in the mood for heartbreak delivered in flawless verse with a touch of bitter cosmic irony, Lear is your man. Nothing comes of nothing. King Lear, long the ruler of Britain and lately full of grand ideas, decides to abdicate his power while keeping the title and ceremonial splendour. His plan? Divide the kingdom among his three daughters, proportionate to the affection they profess for him in public. A love test, as it were. He wants to hand off the hard parts of being king, but keep the love, the loyalty and the crown on his head. Goneril rises to the challenge with baroque intensity. "Sir, I love you more than word can wield the matter, dearer than eyesight, space and liberty." Regan outdoes her. She's an enemy to all other joys but Lear. Cordelia, the youngest, refuses to flatter. "I cannot heave my heart into my mouth," she says. Lear demands more. She gives him nothing. "Nothing will come of nothing," he warns. Still, Cordelia stands firm. She loves him according to my bond, no more nor less. It's an honest answer, and in this room, honesty is the most dangerous thing you can offer. Enraged and humiliated, Lear disowns her on the spot. When his loyal adviser Kent dares to protest, "See better, Lear," the king banishes him too. "Come not between the dragon and his wrath," Lear roars. Kent leaves the court, but not the fight. He still means to serve the king, even if the king doesn't want him. Cordelia, stripped of her dowry but not her dignity, is chosen as queen by the King of France, who prizes her honesty. She departs not in disgrace, but with grace, leaving behind a court now ruled by her sisters, who quietly revel in their inheritance. Only the king's fool dares to speak the truth. He mocks Lear with barbed riddles and mourns Cordelia's exile, calling out the king's folly with fearless wit. "Thou shouldst not have been old till thou hadst been wise," he says, a joke sharp enough to wound. He's the last honest voice in a court drunk on flattery. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the kingdom, one of Lear's oldest allies, the nobleman Gloucester, is caught in his own family drama. He has two sons, Edgar, the legitimate heir, and Edmund, born outside of marriage and bitter about it. Edmund has no interest in playing second. "Thou, nature, art my goddess. To thy law my services are bound," he declares, then adds with venom, "Why, bastard?" He crafts a forged letter, planting it for Gloucester to find, suggesting that Edgar is plotting to kill him. Gloucester, too willing to doubt what's loyal and true, begins to turn against his older son. Two fathers have made disastrous judgments. The loving are cast out, the schemers are rewarded, and those in power are already losing their grip. A man more sinned against than sinning. Lear, keen on visiting his newly crowned daughters, arrives at Goneril's estate with a full retinue of 100 knights and the expectation of hospitality, deference, and affection. Instead, he's met with thin politeness and sharp complaints. Goneril finds his men disruptive and demands that their number be reduced. Lear, outraged by the insult, lashes out. "How sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child!" He storms off to Regan, convinced that she will treat him with the loyalty he believes he deserves. Meanwhile, the banished Kent, still determined to serve his king, returns in disguise under the name Caius and offers himself as a servant. Lear, believing him a plain-spoken stranger, instinctively trusts him. Elsewhere, a second betrayal is unfolding. Edmund, Gloucester's illegitimate son, is plotting to usurp his older brother Edgar's inheritance. He fakes an injury and convinces Gloucester that Edgar attacked him. Edgar, forced to flee for his wife, takes on the identity of Poor Tom, a half-naked, raving beggar possessed by imaginary demons and stripped of everything but survival. We see that as Lear begins to lose his place in the world, so does Gloucester's rightful heir. Meanwhile, Lear arrives at Regan's estate seeking shelter, only to find that she and Goneril have joined forces. They coldly insist that he give up almost all his knights. He begs for dignity, but they are unmoved. When he refuses to yield, they turn him out into a knight breaking with thunder. Once a king, he's now an old man with no power, no home, and no allies but those who follow him out of love. His fool is still at his side, mocking, mourning, and refusing to leave the man everyone else has abandoned. In Lear's growing madness, their roles begin to blur. The fool's riddles grow darker, and the king seems poised to howl at the storm itself. As rain lashes the earth and thunder shakes the sky, Lear staggers into the wilderness with the fool and Kent, now Caius, beside him. "I am a man more sinned against than sinning," he declares, taking shelter in the belief that he's been wronged. But grief soon gives way to rage. "Blow, winds, and crack your cheeks. Rage, blow," he bellows, as if the storm might obey him. "I will do such things. What they are yet I know not, but they shall be the terrors of the earth," he roars. A king in name only, threatening vengeance he no longer has the power to deliver. Then a crack, softer but deeper. "This heart shall break into 100,000 flaws, or ere I'll weep." The loyal are in disguise, the daughters united, and the king has lost even the name of father. Out, vile jelly! The skies slowly begin to calm, but Lear carries the storm within him. He takes shelter in a ruined hovel where his mind begins to fracture. He crowns himself with weeds, stages trials against absent daughters, and clutches at imaginary justice. In the shadows of the same shelter is Poor Tom, a man who gives every appearance of madness, filthy, raving, and haunted by devils only he can name. But this is Edgar, still in hiding, still feigning madness to survive. Lear sees him and stops, stunned. "Is man no more than this?" he asks. The question, for all its wildness, cuts through to something true. Lear sees in Tom the truth of all men. Stripped of rank and robes, what remains? While Lear is breaking down, Gloucester is beginning to take risks of his own. Still deceived by Edmund, he believes Edgar a traitor. But when he hears of Lear's mistreatment, he resolves to help. It's an act of private loyalty in a court growing cruel. For this, he's betrayed by Edmund and handed over to Regan and her husband Cornwall, newly empowered and dangerously violent. Gloucester is bound and brutally blinded. "Out, vile jelly!" Cornwall sneers, gouging out Gloucester's eyes as Regan looks on. But even cruelty has its limits. One of Cornwall's own servants, unable to bear the sight, intervenes, drawing his sword and wounding his master. Regan kills the servant on the spot, but Cornwall's wound proves fatal. The power structure begins to tear itself apart. Goneril's husband, Albany, has so far stood to the side, a quiet figure in the shadow of his wife's ambition. But Gloucester's mutilation and the growing ruthlessness of those in power shakes him awake. He begins to push back, questioning Goneril's actions, challenging her cruelty, and no longer standing quietly by. Edmund, meanwhile, is no longer just playing the family game. With Cornwall dead and Gloucester disgraced, he rises fast, not only in rank but in desirability. Both Goneril and Regan soon set their sights on him. His ambition has outgrown mere inheritance as he begins to manipulate the sisters themselves. 3 men, Lear, Edgar and Gloucester, now wander through this broken world. All have been stripped of power, position and even sight. But in losing everything, each begins to understand more than he ever did before. A foolish old man. Gloucester walks blind towards Dover, led by a filthy beggar with a strange tenderness in his voice. He doesn't recognise it, but the man is Edgar, his son, still in hiding, still loyal. He's heard that Lear has fled toward Dover, pursued by his daughter's forces, and that Cordelia has landed nearby with an army. He says he wants to help, but when he and his guide draw near the coast, Gloucester asks to be taken to the cliffs, not to serve, but to die. Edgar brings him to level ground and describes a towering drop. Gloucester leaps, or thinks he does, and collapses in a faint. When he wakes, Edgar is speaking in another voice, claiming the fall was real and the gods have spared him. "Thy life's a miracle," he says, and something shifts. Gloucester, still blind, begins to see where faith and love might still live. Lear has since arrived in Dover, not by plan, but by grief and wandering, fleeing from the court and the cruelty of his daughters. Cordelia, encamped nearby with the French, sends out scouts to search for him. When they find him, he's barefoot, wild-eyed and muttering about guilt, justice and kings on trial. Cordelia runs to him. She kneels. He stares at her as if she were a ghost. "I am a very foolish, fond old man," he murmurs. "Pray you now forget and forgive." There's no anger left in him, only sorrow, and the hope that it's not too late. Kent remains close, still disguised, still loyal, having been quietly strengthened by a letter Cordelia sent before she returned. He watches over Lear from the edges, serving the king who once cast him out, waiting for a time when truth can be spoken openly. Elsewhere, ambition splits its alliances. Goneril and Regan, once united, now turn on each other, both drawn to Edmund. He encourages their rivalry with false promises and secret notes. Goneril, cold to her husband Albany, begins to plot against him. Regan, newly widowed, presses her own claim. Edmund plays them both. But Albany has changed. Gloucester's torture has awakened him. He denounces the sisters' cruelty and begins to resist Edmund's rise. Edgar, still hidden, sends Albany a letter revealing Edmund's treachery. When the time comes, Albany will call for a champion to answer it with steel. The French forces led by Cordelia soon engage the English in battle, now commanded by Edmund at the behest of her sisters. Their aim isn't conquest, but restoration, to set the kingdom right. Still they lose. Edmund leads the English to victory. Lear and Cordelia are taken prisoner. As they're led away in chains, Lear imagines a final peace. Not freedom, but time. "We two alone will sing like birds in a cage," he tells her. He dreams of a quiet life, of days spent side by side, watched but untouched. But the dream is brief, and the world still has one blow left to land. Howl, 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 howl. With Lear and Cordelia taken prisoner, Edmund acts swiftly. He gives a quiet order. She's to be executed in her cell. No announcement, no delay. Power, once stolen, must be sealed in blood. But others are closing in. Albany confronts Edmund with formal charges of treason, and a challenger steps forward to answer them. A silent knight, face hidden in his helm, defeats Edmund in single combat. He says nothing, not until the fight is won. It's Edgar, no longer poor Tom, but a son reclaimed and a wrong made right. He exposes Edmund's crimes, and the villain, mortally wounded, confesses to betrayal, ambition, and his tangled love for both Goneril and Regan. It hardly matters. Regan has already been poisoned by her sister. Goneril, confronted with exposure and guilt, then ends her own life. The sisters who carved up the kingdom are undone by their own designs. Edgar brings word that their father, Gloucester, has died, his heart broken from love refound. He lived just long enough to know that the son he thought he'd lost had never left him. One father found redemption. The other is running out of time. Edmund, in a flicker of remorse before death, tries to undo his last command. "Some good I mean to do," he mutters, and sends a messenger to stop the hanging of Cordelia in her cell. But it's too late. At that moment, Lear arrives, carrying Cordelia lifeless in his arms. "Howl, howl, 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 oh, you are men of stones!" He clings to her, searching her lips for breath. "Why should a dog, a horse, a rat have life, and thou no breath at all?" She is gone, and with her the last of his strength. Lear dies beside her. Not by blade or poison, but by heartbreak, his final hope extinguished. The kingdom, such as it is, looks for a new ruler. Albany turns to Kent and Edgar, asking them to rule together and restore what remains. Kent only shakes his head. "I have a journey, sir, shortly to go." His loyalty endures, but he knows his time is coming to an end. Only Edgar remains, the man who wore madness to survive it, who now must bear the weight of what's left. He looks out over the wreckage, kings, daughters, traitors, fathers, all fallen. "The weight of this sad time we must obey," he says. "Speak what we feel, not what we ought to say." And so it ends. Love came too late. Justice came too slow. And the kingdom, Lear once divided, lies ruined. Not by war alone, but by blindness, pride, and the slow, bitter cost of not knowing what was truly worth holding on to. See better, Lear. King Lear is Shakespeare's bleakest tragedy and arguably his most towering. It asks what happens when power outlives wisdom, when truth is punished, and when love, loyalty, and justice are all shown to be fragile constructs, easily undone by vanity, cruelty, or a bad inheritance plan. At its core, the play is an autopsy of authority. Lear begins as a monarch so steeped in grandeur he imagines love can be measured in declarations. "Which of you, shall we say, doth love us most?" And ends cradling his hanged daughter, stripped of crown, reason, and hope. This isn't just a personal tragedy, but a philosophical one. Kingship, the divine right of rule, filial obedience, all are unmasked as illusions. Shakespeare seems to ask, if a king is just an old man in a field yelling at the weather, what else are we getting wrong? The play is also rich in symbolism. The storm, of course, is external chaos mirroring Lear's internal collapse. Blindness, especially in Gloucester's subplot, becomes both metaphor and grotesque reality. No one sees clearly until it is far too late. Even poor Tom, Edgar's disguise, embodies the stripping away of status and sanity that haunts the entire play. Themes of justice, nature, madness, and identity swirl through the story, and none are resolved neatly. If anything, King Lear leaves the audience with more questions than answers. Is the world governed by justice or chance? Is madness a kind of truth? And what are we, stripped of roles? Just forked animals raging in the dark? Critically, King Lear has swung in and out of fashion. For over a century it was performed with a happy ending. Cordelia rescued, Lear restored, which says more about audiences than Shakespeare. Today it's rightly restored to full, harrowing glory, and has become a canvas for exploring everything from post-colonial power dynamics to dementia and ageing. Few plays reach so deep into the human condition with such savage poetry. It's not a comfortable experience, but then neither is growing old, losing power, or watching cruelty flourish. King Lear shows us all three, and dares us to keep watching. Let's finish with a brief recap of the plot of King Lear by William Shakespeare. King Lear, an ageing monarch, decides to divide his kingdom between his three daughters according to how much they flatter him. Cordelia, the only one who speaks plainly, is disowned. Goneril and Regan, who offer empty praise, are rewarded and turn against him. Soon, stripped of power and cast out into a storm, Lear descends into madness and begins to understand the cost of his pride, but too late to reverse what he has set in motion. In a parallel storyline, the nobleman Gloucester is deceived by his illegitimate son Edmund, who convinces him that his loyal son Edgar is plotting against him. Forced into hiding, Edgar disguises himself to survive. When Gloucester later tries to aid Lear, he is captured and brutally blinded. Edgar, still in disguise, returns to care for his father and guide him to safety. Gloucester ultimately learns the truth, that Edgar was innocent and remained devoted all along, but only shortly before his death. Cordelia soon returns from France with an army, hoping to restore her father to the throne. The effort fails. Lear and Cordelia are captured, and Edmund orders Cordelia's execution. Edgar then defeats Edmund in a duel and exposes his treachery, but the truth comes too late. Lear enters with Cordelia's lifeless body in his arms and dies in despair. With the royal family destroyed, only Edgar remains to speak of what's been lost. Okay, that's it for this Blink. We hope you enjoyed it. If you can, please take the time to leave us a rating. We always appreciate your feedback. And we'll see you in the next Blink.